So Sam, when I read books and listen to podcasts, if I hear a quote that resonates, I have a folder in my phone that I write it down. And I happened to read this line yesterday and I wrote it down in my quotes folder. This is from Fooled by Randomness by Nassim Taleb. And the quote is, "One of the most irritating conversations I've had is with people who lecture me on how I should behave. Most of us know pretty much how we should behave. It's the execution that's the problem, not the absence of knowledge." Welcome back to the Veterinary Business Accelerator, the podcast for practice owners who want more time, more profit, and more freedom. I'm Dr. Hubert Hemstra, vet, former business owner, and host of the Vetvault podcast. And in the driver's seat again is Dr. Sam Bowden, veterinarian, author, and founder of the Accelerate Practice Academy, where he has helped hundreds of practice owners transform their clinics into profitable, sustainable businesses. And today's episode tackles one of the biggest frustrations practice owners face: that gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it. In this episode, Sam unpacks the 3 currencies every practice owner must manage to build a life of freedom, vitality, and success. He'll tell you why relying on willpower almost always leads to burnout and how the right structure changes everything. And he shares a simple, practical framework to turn big goals into weekly wins without the overwhelm. Okay, let's get to work.
That's almost custom designed for the topic. Perfect.
I've heard that, like, another quote before. If I did everything I've learned, then I would be a billionaire with 6-pack abs, and I'm neither. Why not, Sam? Why am I not?
That quote segues into what I want to talk about today a lot, but I'm going to start with a story. So I was coming back from Western Australia, and we just run a 2-day event around money mastery. So part of our mastermind program, that's one of our pillars, is financial mastery. And a lot of it was the psychology around money and how do people who've really mastered that game, how do they think? A great couple of days, and I always love going somewhere, going to a different city, a different hotel and presenting and teaching people. It gives me a buzz. So anyway, I'm coming back and I'm on the plane. We're at 30,000 feet, and for some reason, it's like I get a sense of a creativeness or a freedom when I'm in a plane. I'm not sure why. It's like because you've left everything behind. You ever get that?
I get this all the time. I get my most inspired ideas sitting in it, usually on the way home. I think it's that change of scenery, you get just outside of yourself a little bit, and then you have that dead time waiting for your plane or on the plane where the mind goes. Tick, tick, tick. So yes, yeah. I know what you mean.
Yeah. So I'm sitting there and I'm kicking back, and I'm sitting there and I suddenly went, I need to write. So I found my notepad and I pulled out my pen and just started writing. And I don't know if you've ever had like a full-blown download. It was like literally words were vomiting out of my pen and I'm just scratching away. And it went on for about an hour. And I wasn't so much thinking the stuff as in it was flowing through you. And if anyone's ever had this experience that's listening, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. It's like the universe is channeling something through you. Anyway.
How many whiskeys have you had? Have you reread what you wrote down? It's like all gibberish, like, what the?
Well, I didn't read it for around about a week and a half because I just want to let it cook away, and I left it. Then I read it, literally I went through it yesterday, and I was like, oh. And it was like all these pieces kind of tied together. And so what I ended up writing, they call it a manifesto. I call it Sam's manifesto of leading an absurdly abundant life. And I wrote a 15-year bucket list, and then I sort of dissected as to why most people in life will probably never get to either create a bucket list or certainly get to tick off the bucket list. And I talked about the 3 currencies that you need to create an incredibly abundant life. And the first one is the currency of vitality. So if we don't have health, nothing else matters. As they say, health is a wealth you don't know you have till you don't have it. The second currency is relationships, because having experiences in life, the first thing you want to do is go share it with someone else. And if you're catching a great wave or you're skiing a great hill, it's magnified if you're with someone else that you can share that experience with. So we're obviously designed as relationship creatures. And the third currency is opportunities. Often people won't give themselves permission to A, ask for things that they want, or B, believe it's possible for them. Probably starts with they don't believe it's possible for them, so therefore they don't ask. And, I was reflecting on this in a vet sense and, have a great life. Like, why not create that whole scenario where you have the three outcomes? Have a great life, which is your work-life balance and your health and things like that. Be a great vet, which is good medicine, exactly the stuff that you share with the world, is how to be a really good vet and get good outcomes for your clients' pets. And the third one, of course, is have a really successful business. And so that means a profitable practice that doesn't need you all the time. You can get away and have a life. So giving yourself that permission to have all three. And I understand a lot that, and this is sort of coming off the back of that financial mastery. I really understand that we as vets, we often join the profession because we wanted to do something pretty meaningful, something that felt really earthy and you're adding value. And, literally today I put down, it's about the only active veterinary science I do nowadays. One of my really great mates, their family pet had a brain tumour and was circling and seizuring, and they tried everything. It was just game over. And so, I went and I put the animal to sleep. And why it's never much fun, we've all been there, but there's a certain part that you feel grateful that you can help that family. And they're just so grateful. And I just thought, isn't it funny? The thing that's, we're actually putting something to sleep, yet it's something people are so grateful for, if you can do it in a really nice and loving way. And yes, it went very well. I thought I was going to miss the vein, but no, even after these years, mate, popped straight in. And it was that reminded me of that sensation of being a vet, the thrill you get about adding value through animals. So I get that that's why we joined the profession. But I think people are missing, I think business owners often, we forget that give yourselves permission. That's the be a good vet bit. The permission is have a life and have a great business. And so really my point was, how do you integrate all three, not trying to sacrifice one of those three? So either, you can bundle them up and say, I want to be a pig, I can have all three. And that's what I talk about. The currency, the third currency of a great life is giving yourself permission to have opportunities and then going after them. And so then I'd moved on to, well, why don't people go after these things? Why don't people give themselves opportunities? And I'd been brewing around my mind and I'd written a whole pile down on the plane. And then yesterday I was on a coaching call that I'm being coached. So I'm in a group coaching call with coaches that are all around the world in all manner of different industries. Like, how's this? How cool's this? There's this one dude. He coaches people on buying boats that are lifestyle boats that you're going to go sail around the world in. So basically, you've got to be prepared to spend $250,000 or more on a boat, and he'll coach you on how to get the right boat, etc. I'm like, how do you become a coach for that? That's pretty cool.
Pretty niche.
It's very, very niche. So anyway, I'm on this call, and someone asked, I'm going to do this, they call it like a light version of their coaching program. And the light version of their coaching program was essentially some of the elements of their coaching program, but they were going to give them the information. Here's how you do it. Off you go do it. But it wouldn't have the support, the hand-holding, the questioning, the accountability. And he was asking, should I not do it? And then there was someone gave an answer or gave a statistic that really gave him his answer. And this nearly knocked me off the Swiss ball that I sit on. Only 3% of people that buy a self-guided program will ever complete it. 3%. And I thought, what's the element there, the difference between a 3% and an 80% success rate? And it's one word, and it's structure. So it's not knowing what to do, it's having the structure to do it. So my question is, if you're not getting what you want to create your absurd life, the health, the relationships, and the opportunities you want in life, here's my question. Do you have the structure around those things? Because there's only three things fundamentally you need. Number one is clarity. What is it I want? We've talked about it on previous podcasts. The second thing that you need to have is, well, how do I do it? Some knowledge, some information, which, hey, there's this little gadget called the internet, and you can kind of glean a bit of stuff off there.
Internet's old school, man. Just ask ChatGPT. It'll tell you how to do it.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, I even chat to ChatGPT. I don't even type in because I have fat fingers. So it's so cool. I had an argument with ChatGPT last night and it won. Bitch. Bitch. Anyway, so I always look and think if you don't have the structure to implement, that's the third piece. That's the only third thing that you need. What do you want? How do you do it? And then do you have the structure of going through and following it? So if you think about structure, we got a vet degree. How? We didn't just say go learn some stuff. So you had clarity you wanted to be a vet. Cool. And then you went and learned some stuff, but there was a structure to it and you follow that structure and hopefully after a few years, you wave a little ticket and say, hey, look, I'm now a vet. I can go do some stuff. It was structure that got you there. You think about creating that head-turning summer body that you've obviously got here. It came as a result of structure. So most people that are really serious about it will have a trainer, a personal trainer, and the personal trainer will give them, here's what we're going to do first, and then we're going to build on that, and here's what you're going to eat. So if you follow the structure and you have someone to keep you within that structure, the results are almost inevitable. So it's not the information that gives you the result, it's the structure that gives you the outcome. And you think about a house, the nice house that you want, you start with the end in mind, sit down with an architect, this is what it looks like, and the architect and the builder, they'll then create a structure. And if you builders follow that structure, you end up with a house. And likewise, your ideal life, your ideal business, it's not about learning stuff. It is about having a structure that means that it becomes not luck, it is literally a process. So this kind of encouraged me because I thought lots of people have desire to do stuff. Lots of people learn stuff, but really what they need is structure. We started working with a practice that's in Canada, and this practice is very successful. If you look at most practices and look at percentages, and obviously I won't share those things, but it was a big turnover practice. It was a really nice net profit. And we chatted for a while, and essentially what came out of it is, I just don't feel I have the structure to help me go to the next level. So I'm feeling like I'm going sideways. So I'm not creating that absurdly abundant life that I really want. So someone once asked me around coaching and mentoring, and it was a friend I played tennis with, and let's call him Woz, because his name's Woz. So anyway, Woz says, he said, what is the piece that you think allows people you work with to get results? And this was a year ago, he asked me, and I was sitting there pondering, and I went, yeah, it's not necessarily like the information. I think the information's great, that's cutting edge, but that's not it. That doesn't give results. It is literally the structure that allows people to do it and put it in. So I thought, because our results, like we get about a 94% success rate of people getting results that really surprise them. And that is because of our structure, period, that we've designed and refined over a period of time. So I thought what might be really useful to our listeners is giving them a basic structure that they can start thinking about in order to get anything they want in life. And I'll premise it with this. People often get inspired. They think, I'm really going to do that. So A, we've got desire. B, we've got intention. That's wonderful. But what happens is the structure that they're relying on is normally something called willpower. And willpower is kind of like Superman with kryptonite in his environment. It just gets weaker and weaker and weaker the longer you're around it. So if you're relying that you think, oh, well, I'll just trust myself, I'll do it. Well, here's your statistics. 3% of listeners have got what it takes. Statistically, most of us just don't. We need some structure. So I thought, let's go through a basic structure. Assume that you want to change something within the next 12 months. We're coming up to Christmas soon. The silly season's just about to start and everyone's nearly lost their brains. But they start thinking about next year. What's next year going to be like? How's it going to be different? Because as humans, we're hardwired towards progression. So we don't want to experience, one of our elements of happiness is feeling like we're progressing. And in our business, it can be the same thing.
I love your vet degree example, actually, because you see the converse in that. There's the vet degree, which is extremely structured. And then here in Australia, next step is memberships. Now, memberships is just, there's an exam date. Here's a list of some stuff you need to know. We'll see you in the exam whenever you're ready. And it's very, very hard. Like I went through the book. I'm like, how am I going to get through this. And you either have to get a very, very good plan, or people pay, education companies, people pay $10,000 for a structured study plan, program, hand-holding. That information's there. Like, I can find it, but I just to get to that exam in a structured way, it's worth getting somebody to help you. So I'm very excited for raw dogging. Raw dogging, have you heard that? It's basically just powering through. Raw dogging is not going to work. So what is structured plan?
Raw dogging, I love it. Someone goes, I'm going on a diet, and here's my plan. I'm just not going to open the fridge door. And I'm really good until about 10:30 in the morning. And, I'm getting a little bit chewy here. I won't take anything, but I'll just do a little investigation, see what's in there. I forgot that bit was there. Well, it's just one. It won't hurt. And so without the structure there, a structure would be, it would have a plan knowing that that's going to happen. It builds all these elements in. Yeah. So let's think about next 12 months, getting something that you want. The first thing is getting clarity on what you want. And the simplest way to do that is two ways. One, if you don't know what you want, you draw a line down a page, and on the left-hand side, you write what I don't want. And you write down everything you don't want. What you do want will be the opposite of it. So it allows you to get clarity around what is it you want. So let's assume that once we've done that, we've got clear for our practice where we're at. And in terms of practice, we would talk about financials. So where do you want the financials to be? Team, where do you want the team to be at? How much are your team coming to you versus they're more autonomous and they're really running 90% of that business for you. The third one would be our clients. So really that comes under marketing. What's the client experience like? Our client numbers going up, or are we just getting better and better clients? What do you want there? And of course, clarity around the actual veterinary side, being a good vet. What does that look like? And what's your role within the business? What are you doing and how much of it are you doing? So when you've got clarity on that, you want to think about really start with, people do 5 and 10 year plans, which I think are brilliant because they stop making you think incrementally and that you can start think parabolically, because 10 years, you can really break things apart and go to a long way in 10 years. But let's assume we're just going to work with our year plan. And if you have a year plan, it's too big. What I can encourage you to do is just write down the outcomes of what it would be like. Just your outcomes, what it would be like, and you write it down as though it's already happened. Hey, we got to 25% profit. We had a crackerjack team of 25 people that were really engaged and they would problem solve themselves, only come to me when they really needed me, and generally they'd already solved it, etc. So really write that story of what it's like as though it's already happened. And then we want to take that and reverse engineer. So we look at where we want to be, we look at where we're at now, and then the question is, what's my next obvious step? And what you do is you want to just break this into, and we like using the structure of a 90-day plan, because 90 days is long enough and short enough that you can put some chunky projects in there, but allows you wiggle time. So normally when you're going to do a 90-day plan, our recommendation is you probably only want to have 3 major-ish projects you're working on.
In that 90-day period?
Yeah. Here's where most people trip themselves up. They're inspired, they do their planning, and I'm going to rip 83 things into my 90-day plan. And what happens is it's too big and overwhelming. So you start, and then after a while, it's just this jungle that sits next to you and you don't know where to start, which actually works against you, because then you start feeling like, I'm a bit of I let myself down. I'm a failure. This is too hard. Planning doesn't work for me, etc. So just start with 3. But if you do it properly, you want to identify, well, what are the 3 things that are going to move the needle the furthest for you? And they want to be probably some of the easier ones to do. So you always start with your lowest hanging fruit and try and knock those ones off to start giving you some momentum. Once we've got those 3, and you can put more on later if you want to, but just start with 3, because what's important is you actually get through the 3. So the structure is you're going to get through 3. And by the way, when you do, you want to give yourself a little celebration. Hey, I've got through those. Fantastic. Because as soon as we celebrate, we get hardwired to go, that felt good, I'll do it again. So now we've got a 90-day plan. We've got probably 3 strategies. So one strategy might be I'm going to train my reception team to create a 10 out of 10 client experience, which will increase our conversions and increase our Google reviews, for example. That would be an example of one strategy. Now, that obviously has got multiple pieces to it. So we take that, our 3 main projects, and we want to break it down into about 3 or 4 main steps you're going to have to do. So we're just taking the big and breaking it down smaller and smaller. Now, once we've broken it down, these are our steps. So step number 1 might be identify the training that we're going to do with our receptionist. Shameless plug here. If you want receptionists trained for you to become client whisperers, you better let us know, because that's what we do. So you get clear on that. We need to define the process. Number 2, I'm going to have to find who's, am I putting all my team through them? I've just got one person. I need to book a meeting with that person, see if they're engaged and get it sorted. Then number 3, hit a kickoff date. So that might be the 3 or 4 things that you need to do. Now, once you've done that for each of your 3 projects, you then literally just go to a weekly planner and you just book those things into your weekly planner. So vets, we're all using a screen on our practice management system. You can just put it in there. So you just time lock, which means you take a project. So let's say I'm going to research on who's going to do my training for me, receptionist. Okay, I'm going to give myself, and you literally go an hour and a half and you block out an hour and a half, you select a time and block it out. Then once you've done it, if you go, that's on Tuesday, yep, I'll do that during that period at lunchtime. So once it's blocked in, and you just tell the team, hey, don't overbook that. You can't book something else in. That's really important to me. So it's locked in position. Now, if you do this and you just have 1 to 2 things that you're working on per week that is going towards your 90-day plan, what you'll find is at the end of 90 days, you'll look back and go, I kind of did it, but it didn't feel like a lot of hard work because you weren't having to think about it. You were just following the structure. And that's as simple as it actually has to be. What you'll find after a period of time is that this becomes almost autonomous for you. Your brain just kind of thinks it. So I sit down at the start of every day and I have my things I'm going to net and I go, okay, that, then that, then that. And the golden rule is you don't start on number 2 till you finish number 1. You don't start number 3 till you finish number 2. It's just a structure. And that's pretty much as simple as a structure needs to be. Where most people get challenged and check it up is they're running around with all these things in their head that they could do, and generally it will create overwhelm because your brain can't kind of lock it into a structure. So the simplest thing, whenever you're feeling overwhelmed with things you could do, we always just say go to plan, which means you sit down, you write it down, and you just start time blocking into your calendar. And I think what's important to note here is that this isn't just work. I talked about in my manifesto the 3 currencies of an extraordinary life. Number 1 was vitality. So you actually plan in, I'm going to the gym there, I'm going for a surf there, I'm going to hang out with some friends there, just so you take the pressure off for a while. So I always used to have this challenge that I thought planning or structure was restrictive. I'm kind of like, roll, I have variety as my primary driver. So it's very much, job's right, we'll just see it and we'll just deal with it on the fly. What I realized is that not having me structure was actually restricting my freedom. It was making it harder to get. So that little flip for me, and I've watched people who just simply find it so hard to plan. I've watched them when they start to plan and lock stuff in. They just end up creating a life that's so much easier because they can get clear on what they want and they can map out the structure that allows them to get there.
That's useful for me because, you described my life. I have many ideas and many things I want to do, but that exact feeling of which direction do you run in? So that's super useful. Can I ask you a couple of granular questions? So when you say you've got the 3 things, you said they don't start with number 2 until you finish number 1 on the day. The 1, 2, 3, because you said we're going to choose 3 things at most to work on in that 90-day period. Yep. How do you structure? Do you go, well, I've got 3 projects I want to work on. I'm going to give myself finish project 1 first before I start project 3, or do I move all 3? Do I say I've got a Tuesday morning I'm working on project 1, and then the afternoon I'll do a bit of project 2, or how do you structure that thing, because what I struggle with this, and I think a lot of other people, very bad at estimating time. So I'm going to go, okay, Tuesday morning, I'm going to do this, and then afternoon, this, and this, and this. And then by Tuesday afternoon, I'm still working on the morning thing because it's taking me 4 times as long as I thought it was going to take me.
Great question. So generally with the bigger projects, so let's say you're doing a website redesign. Like let's say, so we're starting with marketing, ground zero, we're going to redesign the whole thing. You can't really, it's not linear, start and work your way through 1 to Z, because you're going to be waiting on pieces from developers and teams and things like that. What I was getting at is when you start one of the components of that, so you've broken it down into your little components, once you start that one little component, so let's say that we've got, you might have, of one of your projects, there might be 3 or 4 key things to it, and there might be 3 or 4 things you need to do in each of those key steps.
So let's say write the copy for the website, right? That's
write the copy. So what I'll do, I'll get really specific and I'll go write the introductory page. So above the fold, write the copy for that. So that's job 1, not I'm going to write copy for the website, because that's not specific enough. So what happens with your brain, there's something called Parkinson's law. And Parkinson's law states that the amount of time, the complexity of a project increases with the amount of time you allocate it to do it. If you time block, so you go, I'm giving myself an hour to do that. Now, I use newsletters as a classic example, because I watch people go to do a newsletter, and 6 months later, we're halfway through the first 4 paragraphs, because they're still going to do it. They're thinking about it, they want to get it right. What's happening if you say, right, on that date, I've given myself 1 hour to write the first page, your subconscious is primed, and it's sitting there and it's actually brewing up all the little goodies of what you need to do in order to get it finished. When you sit down to do it, what you'll find is often you're not sitting there with a blank pen sort of looking out the window going, okay, waiting for my inspiration. It's kind of there because you've primed your subconscious to do it. So the other thing is, and we used to teach people to do this with surgeries to get more efficient. You'd say, right, I'm going to do that spay, and I'm going to do that spay in, 30 minutes initially, then it's 25 minutes, then it's 20. What you're doing is you're actually giving a message to your subconscious in figure out the pathway that I need to do and neurologically move in order to get this outcome of, a 20-minute spay. So you can apply Parkinson's law in a lot of areas. What you're doing when you're sitting and planning is you're thinking about how long should something take, and if you want to get more and more efficient, what you do is you just squeeze it down. So if you think, it's probably going to take me 3 hours, you go, great, I'm going to allocate 2. And your brain will figure out how you need to go in order to get that done. If you just have, I'm going to work on my projects, okay, and people will say, I'm having an admin day. And I'm like, that's terrible, because then you'll sit down at admin day and go, okay, well, look at that pile of white crap all over my desk. Where do I start? It's not clear enough that the brain can go, duke, 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 and work its way through. So in order to do your projects, you want to break them down into little micro pieces. But once you start a micro piece, you allocate a time and you write it down. Like you've actually got to plan it in. There's something physically about not thinking about how long it will take, but actually blocking off time. That means you're way more likely to get it. So what is it? Break it down to be really specific and then lock in the amount of time. They say when you're writing a book, you don't sit down to write a book. You sit down to write 1 page, because writing a book's too big and your brain just, where do I start? So we want to chunk it down, give a really specific message to your subconscious. This is what I want to do in that period of time. And you'll find you'll be way more efficient and easier.
So interesting. You mentioned the newsletter example. That's one place where I've gotten exactly what you're doing. I've built a system to make me do it, because I committed I'm going to do a weekly newsletter, and I want it to be out by Friday lunchtime.
Yeah.
And I have in my schedule split into 3 parts, and I do Wednesday morning, do the draft, and I have about an hour and a half to do the draft. Thursday morning, write it, and I have just the morning to do it. And then Friday before publishing, quick read, edit. And I think what gets in the way of lots of these things is perfectionism, because I'm usually, but when I'm done writing on a Thursday morning, I'm like, I'm not really happy with that, but my time's up. And it's got a ship. I could spend another 4 hours on it to perfect it, and that, but it's It's more my personal perfectionism. And again, maybe people listening to goes, yeah, you should spend more time on your knees. It'd be a lot better. But
Well,
I can't. I can't. It's either I'm not going to do it, or I
yeah,
do the best I can do within the allocated time to get it out there. Now, I'm not that good at it in many other things that I do. So I love listening to this. It's actually cementing it in for me to say, okay, well, there's a place where I do it really well. Let's just extrapolate it to other parts of my work.
that is a perfectly designed structure. You're not having to think. See, thinking, like the brain, what the brain uses something like 80% of the energy in the body. Like, it's incredible how much energy it's actually chewing up. When you're having to think, all right, now what have I got to do? Now what have I got to do? That's the hard bit. When you know, oh, I don't need to think about it, I just need to do that bit. That's why it's easy, because you're not having to think about organizing and things like that. It takes up a lot of juice to do that, particularly when you're tired or you're really busy. So this is why I like people to map out your week before you start. Because once your week starts, that horse is bolted and you're hanging on by a couple of little hairs off its tail, and it's in the Melbourne Cup, like it's not trotting around. So the chance of you getting back in the saddle and getting control is minimal. And then we think, oh, I'll do it next week. So, some people might lock in and go, I know one of our, a lady who worked with, Lisa, I think she used to have a 5 o'clock wine on a Sunday. White wine, red wine, I think, 5 o'clock on a Sunday, and she mapped out a week. And she still does it. She's done it for years. Now, that works for her. For me, I don't, on a Sunday afternoon, I'm tired and I'm being in Australia, been surfing or whatever. So it doesn't work for me. But when I sit down on a Monday morning, I don't start doing anything. I don't open an email. I don't do anything until I have mapped out my week. And then off I go. And then you look back at the end of the week and you go, look at that hill I climbed. That's pretty impressive stuff. Like, I just recorded 6 marketing videos in an hour and a half prior to this podcast, because I'm going to Australia this afternoon, and I'm like, I'm not having that over my head. I'm going to nail it. Now, in my head, I had it was this big thing. By the time I got it, I just kind of went bang, because I'd just given myself that small amount of time. And it just means you're employing your subconscious, pulling it out of retirement, going, hey, do some heavy lifting here.
So the other thing that gets in the way from personal experience is life, the urgent. So I'll time block. I'll try and say, okay, I'm working on this project this time, and then something happens. So it'll be a child-related thing, or the tractor breaks, or if you're a vet practice owner, it's one of the million things that happens in a practice that is the urgent that needs attention now. How do we circumnavigate that, even just emotionally, if not physically?
Yeah, life's such a toad, how it gets in the way of your best kept plans, isn't it? But it's true. It's life, right? So I don't get adhered to, like, I'm going to judge myself as success or failure if I get through that plan or not. What I know is that life will come and throw things at me. And, I didn't wake up this morning, or I got woken up at 5 o'clock with an urgent call to go and put someone's dog to sleep. I didn't plan that. But because I had my structure of my day already set up, I've still got through everything, even though that threw me out. We're like, well, how are we going to get the kids to school? And you're like, well, I don't know. This just fits in, and then I'm back on track. So it's like you can get knocked off kilter, but you come back up again and you're back in position. You know those, like you see them at the AFL, they're the umpires that you can knock over, they're the blow up umpires, and they're doing, and they bounce back up again. And you can knock them over and they bounce up again. I think they use them in boxing as well. It's kind of a structure will allow you to do that. So life will kind of knock you over a bit, but if you have the structure, you'll come back. So if you want to get fitter, if you want to learn how to play an instrument, if you want to make some more money, if you want to get a better team, you've got desire. Fantastic. That's your soul telling you what it is you want, and that's your next thing to do. The question I want you to ask yourself is, what's my structure, or am I just relying on willpower? I think that's where people get stuck.
I'm going to add one of my own insights, if that's okay, to the question I just asked, actually. Sometimes you have to be a bit of an asshole. A lot of the urgent things that I feel I should do, I feel like they should be done because it's an expectation of somebody else. So in my scenario at home, it'll be my wife asks me to do this thing, but I've blocked out on my, I know what I want to do today, but she just sees me sitting on my ass at my desk all day thinking I'm doing nothing. I'm actually working.
You've been talking to that Sam bloke again.
But it's exactly the same at work, right? I own a practice and I want to work on the copy for the website this morning, but Mrs. Jones wants to speak to me about Fluffy's medication or something like that. And the people pleaser in me wants to say, all right, I should go call Mrs. Jones. She's waiting for a call. This thing that I was going to work on is less important. I'll put it aside. Or the receptionist wants me to do this thing. Or my wife really wants me to, if I want her to be nice to me, I'll go do this thing. And I'll use the example at home. Often I have to go, actually, I will help you with that thing, but not now because I've blocked this time off. I've got to finish this thing first. I'll get to your problem tomorrow. And she's not going to be happy with that. And that receptionist at work and Mrs. Jones, they're not going to be happy with you. They're going to go, oh, but I expect you to do jump when I say jump. And actually going, no, this is important. This thing, and whether that is the website or going to the gym, it is my space. Be a little bit more selfish. And I find a lot of vets specifically really struggle with that because we want to help. We want to please people. Do you find that with your clients?
Yeah, I actually did I've done a course called From People Pleaser to Soul Pleaser. And it's about the need to that we have this need that I should put other people's desires in front of my own desires. Otherwise, I'm being selfish, which is kind of a culturally taught thing. And this is where I agree with you that you have to acknowledge it. But I think you have to be very clear around your boundaries that, no, as a leader of a business or a little leader of family or whatever, my job is to get up to the top of the hill and to take everyone with me. Now, if someone keeps saying, oh, I want to go and have a look at this flower over here. No, I want to go back down there. I want to go sideways. You're never getting up the hill. And there has to be this is why we always say that we can't coach desire. You've got to have the desire to get to the top of the hill or get to that destination. Otherwise, all this other stuff will just buffet you. It'll kind of knock you around. I remember I had a training done with me, and it was way back in the days where I first started being coached. And we're in this room, and they play a lot of games because how you play games is how you play life. So what they did, they put us in groups of, I think it was 4. And they put us in groups of 4, and then they gave us a task to do. And I think we had to create a marketing plan you could make up any business, and you had to create a marketing plan, and you had 45 minutes to do it. And they said, are you ready? Go. So they start. Now everyone's sitting down, they get in their little groups, and then all of a sudden they crank heavy metal music, like heavy metal music. And we're like, what? And they just play that, then they'll turn it down, they'll crank it up again, and they'll turn it down, and then they'd put on classical music, full bore, like you're having to yell at each other. And we're going, this is really weird. Like, do they like this music? This isn't nice music. And then I can remember they came in, and one of the facilities came up and tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, Sam, I've actually had someone ring the office. You've got a phone call. Can you come and take the phone call? And I remember sitting there thinking, what's this game about? And I kind of realized what they were doing was mimicking life, that you're trying to get something done, you're on path, but here's all these distractions and here's these things trying to pull you off task. And I just went, no. And then they came back and they had 2 of them stood either side of me going, it's really important. It's your mum. Something serious is going on. Now, I kind of knew that it probably wasn't, but I remember having to turn around. I won't tell you what I said. Why don't you go in? And I told them where they should go. And that's when they kind of giggled and walked off. And they went, he's got it. But that kind of lasted with me, that I realized that as you're going through life, like hearing a ding on your phone, that's a distraction. Oh, I wonder what so-and-so's doing. I could go and jump online and have a look at that. Not until you finish your videos, Sam. So being clear around what you want and building structure in, and then giving yourself permission to have the opportunity to say no is so important. In fact, I will say that the better you are at that, the more successful you are going to be in getting the outcomes that you want. So very much, I'll get around to that, but it'll have to happen later. I used to have my team, the classics at work, when you're working on something and your team can get access to you, instead of them having to figure it out, it's easy to go and ask Sam. So my golden rule was, if my door's shut, the only reason you can come and knock on it is if the building is burning. That's it. Like literally. And they'd come knock and I'd just go away. But I'd frame them up that this is the way it's going to be. I set a structure in place that they do, just leave me alone. And I think that's when people are trying to put aside some time to work on the business, you need to frame up your team that you're not taking phone calls from Mrs. Jones. I know it suits Mrs. Jones, but Mrs. Jones is not that concerned where you get in your life. She's worried about her dog. You have to pick which, lose the battle, win the war.
Is that us?
I think so.
I started with a quote, but another one I saw the other day that said, a goal without a plan is just a wish.
Yeah. You know what amazes me, and this is the thing that punched me between the eyes as I'm flying back 30,000 feet. Most people won't choose to create the life they want. They accept the life that gets given to them rather than choosing the one they want. And it's just because either the belief they don't give themselves the opportunity or the structure. So I thought we'd do something a bit fun for the next podcast, Hugh. It seems by watching, how many people listen and how far they listen through that you suckers love seeing someone get interrogated online. So I thought this would be pretty cool. And if you're listening to this, you might put your hand up. I'm going to live coach someone to help them get clarity on what the next 12 months would look like. And so they can start building a structure, building a plan around that. So there'll be two pieces of that. One's clarity, and I'm not going to just talk about their business. We're going to be looking at creating what I'd call your absurdly abundant life, help you get clarity. And number two, what's a plan? So you guys can see this in real time, what it actually looks like. Do you reckon that'd be helpful?
Should that be the homework to say, email Sam if you'd like to be on the podcast and get a coaching session on, can I apply?
You get personal coaching, you.
Here's a plan. I'll release this episode next, as in today or tomorrow, and then we will wait for responses and we'll schedule that for a recording session in 2 weeks' time. So we might have an episode in between. So your homework is email Sam at where? What's your email address again, Sam?
It's sam@acceleratepracticeacademy.com. And the deal is I'm going to help you get clarity and help you build a structure. And it's a coaching session and we're going to record it and others are going to listen to it. So if you're cool with that, put your hand up and we will ask some qualifying questions to make sure it's a fit because we want to make sure it's a good example. It serves everybody. And if so, we'll jump on and do a live session. It'll be fun.